So Ron DeSantis' campaign is not doing too well, to say the least. So we're now at the point in the campaign where the disagreements are bubbling to the surface and people are starting to point fingers at each other and blame each other for why he hasn't taken off in the way they wanted. So look at this. Quote, "You have a stick up your ass. Pro-DeSantis super PAC reportedly dogged by infighting. Leaders of a super PAC backing Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' 2024 campaign reportedly descended into chaotic infighting in recent days and nearly came to blows during a meeting last week. NBC News reported on Tuesday that during a private meeting last week to discuss how to combat Nikki Haley's rise in the polls, Jeff Rowe and Scott Wagner, who both hold top positions at the PAC, got into a heated argument. During the meeting with a small group of 9 board members and senior staff to discuss budgeting, Rowe reportedly raged, quote, 'You have a stick up your ass, Scott. Why don't you come over here and get it?' Wagner responded, according to a source in the room who spoke to NBC. He then reportedly rose from the chair, but he was quickly restrained by fellow board members. The lengthy and detailed NBC report carried 4 bylines. Dasha Burns, Maddox, it doesn't matter. And expounded on the implications of the heated exchange on DeSantis' ailing campaign. The infighting represents an escalation in the long-running war between Never Back Down's professional political operatives and DeSantis' Tallahassee-based inner circle over who is to blame for the governor's failure to compete effectively with frontrunner Donald Trump for the Republican nomination. DeSantis' months-long tumble created an opening for Haley, whose surging poll numbers and newfound affection from mega donors pose an existential threat to the Florida governor's campaign. All right, look, let me just pause to say this. It's kind of hilarious that they're focused on Nikki Haley, because it's like, dude, you're like 30 points down to Donald Trump, or maybe even 40 at this point. So to weirdly obsess over how Haley's doing, I don't know, that strikes me as like just warped. Like, did you forget you're in a race and you're trying to win and there's a guy who's crushing both of your asses? So I just find that weird. And then the second thing is, I love that they're pointing fingers at each other, because, like, the reality is it really didn't matter what DeSantis did and what he said and what strategy you guys rolled out. Like, at the end of the day, it didn't really matter, because it's a vibes primary. Trump is dominating on that front. He also, no matter how good DeSantis may be at triggering the libs, Trump is the king at triggering the libs. So, and then you also add in the Republican primary, every single criminal charge against Trump led to a bump in the polls for him. So it didn't matter what he said or what he did or what strategy they implemented. And it's kind of funny to me that they don't realize that, because that's like the obvious takeaway, but they really think that there was somehow some magical path that they could have charted. And it's just not the case, right? Like, it's just not the case. But guys, understand something. This is what happens when a campaign fully implodes. This is what happens, because people start pointing fingers at each other and there's blame to go around and everybody starts hating everybody because they don't want to feel like they're responsible for the failures. They want to put it on others. I mean, we saw this with Bernie Sanders, right? A lot of Bernie Sanders, staffers over time began to despise each other and everybody hated somebody else. And, and without having like a strong leader at the top to maintain discipline and keep your eye on the prize, everything just implodes. And that's exactly what's going on with DeSantis. It happened with Bernie. It happens with every single losing campaign. And by the way, good point I saw on Twitter is that a lot of these people who are now on Team DeSantis were the former Ted Cruz staffers. And it's like, well, you already hired some professional losers, so I don't know what you expected, but there's nothing they could have done anyway. So they go on here to say, the report went on to note that DeSantis and his wife, Casey, have been among those increasingly upset at Never Back Down's leadership, according to 2 sources familiar with their thinking. And after tempers flared at last week's meeting, 3 close DeSantis allies, David Dewhurst, Jeff Aaron, and Scott Ross, launched a second super PAC, Fight Right Inc., in part at their urging. So there's such strong disagreement over one super PAC that's pro-DeSantis. They created another super PAC that's pro-DeSantis, I guess to do with a different strategy. I'd love to know the details of who's advocating for what. I'm sure you have some people who are like, you need to be harder line, and some people are like, hit Trump harder, and other people are like, don't hit Trump at all. And then you also have, by the way, in going after Haley, there was some DeSantis-aligned news outlet that said did you know her real name is like Nimrata, whatever her Indian name is? And they were using that as just like classic, like when Hillary released the picture of Obama in classic like Muslim garb, just like, hey, have you considered racism? Here's some racism. Do you like me better than her? By the way, they still do. In the polls, they still do. People still prefer DeSantis to Haley. It was only by like 1 or 2 points. But like, again, I don't know why you're fighting it. You got to go after Trump. There's no way around it. Like, that's the only... It really, if there's anybody in the world who should be wishing for Trump's quick downfall the most, it would be Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. Because that's their only prayer, is if Trump actually goes down, before the election. So anyway, trouble in paradise, man. And it's only going to get worse. Because he's not, he doesn't have a charge back in him. Even if he has a charge, let's say he picks up 10 points, 15 points, he's still way behind Trump. So, like, it never materialized, man. It never. There was a time immediately after the midterms when Trump's candidates got wiped out that DeSantis was the favorite. But then from then on, the criminal charges helped Trump with the Republican base. And he's just the vibes guy, right? Trump was relentlessly hitting everybody, who's running against him, and the other people are barely laying a glove on him. It is what it is. There's no way around it. Homeboy's got a lock on that party. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.